Hey, YouTube here today, coming to you with some stories. Not too much going on this week, but some things are happening here. Some things are going on with, we're going to talk a little bit about Trump's visit to Kenosha, going to talk a little bit about the economy, going to talk a little bit about coronavirus, which has been here for months now. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hit that. So the Indian economy. Okay, first thing I want to hit here, Indian economy. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So the Indian economy is going through a major retraction period right now, and this is pretty fresh as of a couple of days. And so, um, according to NPR, it says Indian economy shrinks by 24% as the country sees its highest coronavirus numbers. Now, why is this concerning? Well, the issue here is that a few weeks ago we saw that. Um, Britain had hit a similar situation. So they had a decline, their economy shrank by 23.9%. And that was a few weeks ago. And so now we're seeing the Indian economy doing the same thing, 24% as the country sees its highest coronavirus numbers. So coronavirus is, as we've been seeing and been expecting, affecting economies. Here in the States, we're seeing a decline because of joblessness and different things due to coronavirus. um, the job rate was pretty high. We're doing pretty well for a while, it looks like, from what is reported. And so it says here, with the coronavirus spreading faster in India than anywhere in the world, the Indian government on Monday announced the country's biggest economic contraction in 24 years. That's a long time. 24 years ago puts us at what, 1996, right? And so if we think about that time period, Clintons were in office. We were at the time supposedly, in a surplus, I think, from what they report, and that's the last time. Even going beyond the 2008 housing bubble that we had here, we're looking at a major contraction. And the issue here, and we have to always remember, is that all the world economies are tied together. So when one drops, it's kind of like they're tethered with the same string. They're all hanging by the string, and when one drops, well, it kind of drags the other. Another drops, well, it drags the other, and whatever is holding it up eventually will be drugged down as well. And so, just we got to keep our eyes really focused on this stuff because it's getting pretty intense out there. On to our next uh, happening here, and so over Fox News reports progressives demand Portland's mayor and police chief resign after fatal shooting. And so we all know about the fatal shooting that happened with the Trump supporter out there. Um, Apparently, from what's reported, they just kind of clashed real quick. Maybe not much, really. They just found out that this guy was a Trump supporter. They came out after him. They said, hey, he's over here. Somebody's over here. We got one. And then suddenly you hear shots and done. Guy's dead. They tried to come in and help him out, but, it was too late. And so the interesting thing here that we have to remember is that, so the progressive side, they tend to they're part of the cancel culture. I mean, it just is. And so what happens here is you have a mayor, Ted Wheeler, who's trying to constantly support this group, but the group doesn't support him. They don't care to have him there. The issue with the progressive movement, and call it a plus or negative, whatever you want to call it, but the truth about it is, if it's not truly progressive, they don't want any part of it. I get that. Years ago, I would consider myself semi-progressive, not totally. I would be probably a little more moderate left. At this point, I'm a little more moderate right, but understanding that you want things the way you ask for them. And so in this case, Ted Wheeler represents more of the classical liberal, and so he doesn't quite fit that mold. They don't really want him, although he wants to be wanted. And so, that being the case, they're now wanting him to resign, along with the police chief. And so, it says here, a number of progressive groups in Portland, Oregon, are demanding the resignation of Mayor Ted Wheeler and Police Chief Chuck Lavelle after the deadly shooting that occurred in the city over the weekend as skirmishes broke out. And just to give you an idea of some of these organizations, so we have the Oregon chapter of the Council of American Islamic Relations, the Oregon Justice Resource Center, the Portland Democratic Socialists of America. And so very progressive groups. Socialists are in some of the names. And the issue here is, again, they do not want him there. And to the point that, and I don't have that story today, but it just recently happened, as of yesterday was reported, that Wheeler's condo, I think it was attacked. They were trying to burn it down. They really don't want him there. He wants to be wanted, but they don't want him. And so just one of the things going on today. Moving on to our next happening here, a little positive note. So a couple days ago, it was reported by NBC News that more than 100,000 raised for girls who needed Taco Bell Wi-Fi to do their schoolwork. Some of you may have seen this story, or maybe seen the picture. Here's the picture that touched people's hearts. A couple of little girls doing their classwork outside of Taco Bell because they don't have Wi-Fi at home. So many people got together and began to put together, I'm not sure if it was a GoFundMe or what it was, but they raised $100,000, which is pretty cool. It says more than 115,000 has been raised for a migrant family in California after a photo was shared on social media of two girls using Wi-Fi at a Taco Bell to complete schoolwork, highlighting the digital divide for low-income students. Kids really, really don't have access to education right now, even though we're doing our best. We're trying to provide long distance learning and so on, distance learning, and the students, it's just not the same thing. Some students learn a little faster, some are more independent, some require more support. Parents are either working or busy doing something, there's siblings, there's distractions, there's television, there's this, there's that. Students are not able to learn, and on top of that, many of them do not have the resources such as Wi-Fi to do so. So I thought this was a pretty cool story of what's happening out there. On to our next one. So just recently, as of I believe last night, it came out that Nancy Pelosi, she got caught. It says here, Pelosi used shuttered San Francisco hair salon for blowout. Owner calls it slap in the face. And so if we watch the video, we can see here that
True Earth is helping remove plastic waste while keeping your clothes fresh and clean. Founders Ryan, Brad.
Okay, take that off. So we can see here that in the video, you'll watch Nancy Pelosi walking through, and the issue is that this salon is closed. It's closed to the public. The owner of the salon can't open it. She's been out of work for 6+ months. And the issue here is that she rents out spaces for people to use, other professionals, and one of the customers of one of the professionals that borrows it or rents it came in and brought her in. And let's see what you think before I say anything more. And so here's the video. Here's Nancy coming in. It's really brief. No mask, no PPE, no nothing, getting her hair blow dried from what's being reported, cut, whatever it is. And so what's the issue here? Well, number one, the owner is barely trying to make it. She has no way to make money right now and cannot open her salon. Nancy Pelosi, who's been hard on anybody who does not wear the appropriate mask or anything else, has come down hard on these people. And so that's the issue. And here she is taking full advantage of the place, not wearing a mask, not doing anything. And the issue here, and the funny thing is just that it just reminds us of the hypocrisy behind it. So it's one of those do as I say, not as I do. And just a funny story there in terms of that. Not funny to anyone who is trying to adhere to these guidelines, and not funny to anyone who cannot open their businesses and is struggling to feed their families. But Nancy, with her $24,000 fridge and fancy ice cream that she liked to share with all of us, I'm sure, is able to do so. So just an interesting little story there. And so moving on to our next one, tech-savvy trolls send Biden-Trump web traffic from unwanted domains. And this one's interesting because, so we have, again, both sides. Biden's affected, Trump's affected. And these nonpartisan approaches are pretty interesting. So it turns out that some tech-savvy trolls are working with their mischief on the dueling presidential campaign, sending them web traffic from unlikely and unwanted sources. As social media users have noted recently, type Antifa.com in your browser, and it directs you to JoeBiden.com. And if one tries ministrokes.com, it goes to DonaldJTrump.com. so, okay, why is this funny? Well, Joe Biden for the longest time has not come against these, we'll call them protests, call them riots, call them insanity, whatever you want to call them. And recently he has. And so we've been, in general, people have been associating, okay, he's been siding with that group, with Antifa, because he doesn't speak negatively against it, doesn't state that what they're doing is wrong. Trump, again, I haven't followed up too much on this, but apparently there were some reports that he had maybe some mini strokes because of something he was doing or how he was acting in front of the camera or something. And so for some reason, it sends you to ministrokes.com. Just a little tidbit of humor there on the part of these hackers. It's pretty funny. But again, I just love it when people approach this not in one direction, not left or right. Let's just do something in general. So little comedy skit there for you. And so the next one here is CDC drops 14-day self-quarantine recommendation for international and out-of-state travelers. Some people may be excited, some people may be upset. So as of right now, the CDC, and I believe this came out just August 24th, actually a few days ago. I hadn't heard about it. And so the CDC has dropped the 14-day quarantine. So if you go out of state, if you go international traveling, you can come back, dependent, of course, on your state, your local area, so on and so forth, and not have to quarantine. If you've been waiting to go on a trip, well, here you go. If you've not gone because your employer or somebody says, hey, you have to quarantine for 14 days, well, again, depending on your guidelines of your state, it says here since March, the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention has advised travelers to self-quarantine for 14 days after all international travel and after domestic travel to states seeing a high rate of coronavirus cases. And so if we jump down here, it tells us a little bit about how it works. So broadly speaking, if someone travels to an area with an active outbreak, it's reasonable upon return for them to be required to get tested or quarantined, a measure that many states now have in place. Boston University epidemiologist Sandro Glea told the Washington Post, "We're all trying to adapt to shifting realities and shifting facts all the time." He says, but the advice to distance frequently, sanitize, and wear a mask in public are guidelines we should all be following all the time, regardless of whether we traveled or not. And so ultimately, that's what they're saying. Get tested when you come back. Practice good soft social distancing. Practice, wearing a mask and all these things. Take care of yourself. When you come back, if you have to, do what you have to do. Otherwise, the CDC is not recommending anything else on top of that. So just changing things. So hopefully, that might be a plus. It may be that we're actually moving forward on this coronavirus thing. Let's continue here. And so since we're on the topic of coronavirus, as COVID-19 vaccines reach final stages, who will be first in line? So according to several reportings here, and this is from NBC News, we should have a vaccine real soon. The president's been saying that. Some of the news outlets have been saying that. Some of them are kind of skeptical because the president's saying it. So according to this is a handful of the dozens of experimental, okay, key word, experimental, and that's what concerns me. COVID-19 vaccines in human testing have reached the last and biggest hurdle, looking for the needed proof that they really work, as a U.S. advisory panel suggested Tuesday, a way to ration the first limited doses once a vaccine wins approval. Experimental. I'm not a big fan of experimental. I'm okay as far as experimental, meaning we're still testing it, not experimental on let's try it on the public. That's just not how we should do things and not how we've done them in the past. Most vaccines, as you probably know, take 4 to 7 years from what I understand to prove efficacy, to prove effective, to prove safe. And here we're producing one in about 6 months. Now, if we were to go back to, say, October, when Wuhan apparently first reported it in China, then, or at least it was pulled out of them, then we're looking at maybe close to a year. But even then, that's a lot. That's not very much. And so, according to this, they're stating that where is it? The first people they're going to target are the first responders. And so there'll be your people who work in hospitals, so on and so forth. They're looking at providing it for, uh, you know, minorities, people who tend to have more of a struggle with the virus. Interesting things. Not sure I'm gonna line up for that one right away. Not sure I'm gonna line up at all. I'm kind of concerned about this one. But again, it depends on the person, depends on how you view this thing. If you want to go get it, by all means. If you have a problem with it, well, I think you're not alone. So again, just something to be aware of that's coming down the pike real soon. And so we'll continue here. And so to finish up our final stories here, a little bit of a comparison between how this is reported. So we know that Trump visited Kenosha yesterday. And so Fox News reports says Trump visit, site of riots in Kenosha. Trump visits site of riots in Kenosha, promises to help businesses rebuild. Okay, so I'd say that's a positive, right? Trump visits, promise to help rebuild, so on and so forth. There's a few pictures of him. Some are saying they were just photo ops, so on and so forth. Call it what you want. President Trump on Tuesday got up close at the damage caused by recent riots and looting in Kenosha. Touring property damaged by the violence, blasting anti-American riots, so on and so forth, devastated by the building. Okay, by the riots here. So he says, we're going to get it fixed up. We're going to help people rebuild their businesses in Kenosha. And so just Fox News' take on this. Sounds pretty positive, he wants to go in there, help out, so on and so forth. I guess there's a tweet here. Trump says, heading to Kenosha, Wisconsin, to thank law enforcement and National Guard for a job well done. The violence stopped 6 days ago. The moment the Guard entered the picture, thank you. Well, it looks like that's happened a few times. When the National Guard actually came in, they did straighten things out. Well, it's number one, you're dealing with federal law, you're dealing with a federal force, and it's a little bit different. So people are a little more cautious about it. I don't know. Some people have different feelings. They feel, that that's overreach, that we shouldn't have our own troops on our own soil, going after our own people. I agree. I don't think that's a good thing. The issue is when you get to a point where you require that, that's not good either. That we ourselves are destroying our own nation, that's not good either. And when people sign up, it does state in there, and we have to remember that, that it's against foreign and domestic, both. And so that we're going to protect. So that's kind of a bit of a interpretation thing in terms of what you see that as. So CNN reports Trump doesn't address systemic racism during his visit to Kenosha. Okay, so we had Fox saying Trump's visit to Kenosha promises to help to rebuild, look positive, so on and so forth. CNN comes and says we're going to squash that. Trump doesn't address systemic racism. Okay. Thing about CNN, and thing that I've noticed is that CNN tends to kind of sandwich things. Okay, the typical sandwich that we produce in most situations is a sandwich where you give a positive, then what you kind of want to dig in there with. Okay, it's like, here's the problem I got, but I'm going to sandwich it again and say, okay, these things, I don't care about you, but hey, you got two good things. Take a sandwich. Constructive criticism. CNN does the opposite. They tend to give you the negative, put in a little bit of positive, and give you another negative, and now take it. That's why it doesn't go down too well. And so the trip to Kenosha by Trump, call it what you want, he went there to visit, show presence, tell them that they're supported, so on and so forth. And I forget how many millions of dollars he provided, or was providing for both law enforcement, for the government there to help the situation. I think it was 40 million or something to that effect. And so first off, it says he visited Kenosha, Wisconsin on Tuesday, going against the wishes of officials, requesting he stay away from the city. Okay. Now, I know there's mixed feelings, and I've read both things where they said, okay, we'll cause a problem. I'm not sure who's saying they stay away, what officials. I'm sure not everybody's in agreement, but hey. Moving on here, the president did not meet with the family. Okay, strike number one. of Jacob Blake, the man who was shot in the back 7 times. During this trip, Trump was asked by a reporter whether he thinks systemic racism is a problem. I wonder if it was their own reporter trying to. It's just hilarious what these guys do sometimes. Um, and so far, 2 black eyes, right? Possibly 3. Let's see. Yeah, so 3. So we have the person who, or the officials who didn't want him there. We have Jacob Blake's family, who he hasn't talked to. We have when the reporter asked him about systemic racism and the response. So there's your upper portion, right, of the sandwich. And as far as this, um, I don't know. I mean, he's addressed it in some places. We'll see. According to Trump, Jacob Blake's family agreed to talk to him. He did want to talk to them, apparently, but I guess they wanted a lawyer to be present. Um, Again, typically, if there's a lawyer present, you have to have representation also. It's kind of a weird situation. Don't know if it's right or wrong, but at least I know in my situation, if somebody said, "Hey, I have a lawyer and I have a conversation with you," I'd say, "Put the brakes on. I need my own representation before we continue." Um, so something to consider. It says Trump also largely sided with the message he's held on to since demonstrations spread across the country this summer, arguing that police violence is not a systemic issue. So continuing to add to that top layer. Trump's visit to the swing state marked another attempt to continue his campaign of linking Democrat-run cities. Okay, now linking them to states of violence. His visit included surveying the areas of the city damaged by demonstrations, touring an emergency center, so on and so forth. This must be the positive part. During the roundtable, Trump spoke at length about law enforcement and damage to small businesses. Okay, I didn't get to watch the roundtable yet. I do want to get to that. Announcing that his administration would be providing millions of dollars in funding toward law enforcement, public safety resources, and small businesses. That's what we had mentioned earlier. But it wasn't until more than 30 minutes into the event that someone in the room mentioned Blake by name. Okay, so that was it. So that was your little sliver of turkey in the middle, and we're going to end up going into the rest of it here. So I think from there it goes on into Kitterman, the 17-year-old that shot, the Blake family, asked not to visit. So they go back into all these other things. And that's what you got from CNN. A local Milwaukee Journal Sentinel says 5 takeaways from a peaceful and highly political visit to Kenosha by President Donald Trump. I'd say that's pretty positive, right? It says 5 takeaways from a peaceful visit. Okay, another local. Oops. Oh, I didn't put it on there. Another local story, which was I think it's a WTJ NBC News locally, stated that there were clashes between protesters, and so here we see peaceful visit to Kenosha, and on the other hand, again local reportings clashes. When we read that article, the clash actually there's a picture, and there was a little bit of a back and forth, but in the end they actually shook hands. And if that would have been reported, that would have been awesome. That would have been great. That's what we want to see. We want to see, okay, there is some discussion, there are some disagreements, but in the end, we're American. In the end, we all live here. In the end, we can agree to disagree, and that's what that demonstrated. I wish I had brought it up here. I don't have it on here, but that was awesome. I wish I would have reported that, and rather they focused on a one header on there stating that there were issues. So that's what I have here. And I did want to share one other thing with you guys. Let's see here. But we'll save it for next time. That's what I have today. Just wanted to share that with you guys, keep you up on what's going on. Today we hit a little bit on Trump, a little bit on Kenosha, a little bit on coronavirus, a little bit on, some good things that are happening out there too. Stay strong, stay in there. Hopefully you'll be able to continue with the channel, follow, like, subscribe, do whatever you like. I'll try to continue this going on. Been trying to get this going for a while, finally got to it. Hopefully you guys like it, and like I said, like the channel, and hope to see you guys soon. Thanks.